Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back. So, Pokemon. A franchise that came out back in 1996 that shook the world with its new fun way of using different monsters called Pokemon to battle with and go on a long adventure to eventually become the greatest trainer of all time. And a franchise that you've probably been around with since you were a little kid. Maybe you remember all of the good times of getting your first Game Boy for Christmas alongside a copy of Pokemon Red or Blue and getting your first Pokemon to set out on your adventure through the beautiful region of Kanto. Or maybe you remember Ash meeting his partner Pokemon Pikachu for the first time and traveling throughout so many regions to become the very best and just having a good old fun time while doing so. I mean, Pokemon has had a lot of fun and great times that I've come to love since I was a kid and probably always will. Well, today I want to talk about none of that. I want to talk about everything that's dark and disturbing in Pokemon. From some of the scariest moments in the anime and games, to some of the most brutal real-world incidents from Pokemon Go on a website that tracks all of them and is still being updated to this day. And to one of the most disturbing things that you've been doing to your Pokemon without even knowing it. Alright, with all that being said, I hope you're ready. Let's get started. Now, with the most recent Pokemon game announced coming in 2025, being another Legends game, Pokemon Legends ZA, which I'm so excited for because I love Pokemon Legends Arceus so much and the unique spin they took on it, and the music is phenomenal. Anyways, at the very end of the announcement trailer, they teased the Mega Evolution symbol. So we're finally getting Mega Evolutions back in the game after 11 years. I guess less if you count it was in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. And I mean, I obviously love Mega Evolution. It was the first time that we were introduced to a new mechanic in Pokemon that can happen in the middle of a battle and paved the way for future games in the series to follow. I mean, getting to see your Pokemon evolve another time in the middle of battle because of the special bond you two have is amazing, is what I would say, except for some Mega Evolutions are insanely harmful to the Pokemon's own body.
When the battle began, it was going pretty well. Lucario and Pikachu were going head to head, but Lucario ended up missing an attack and he got pretty angry about it. Karina tried to reassure Lucario that it wasn't that big of a deal and told Lucario to go in for another attack, but then everything changed. Lucario's eyes were glowing red. Pikachu got pretty scared from this since it was supposed to be a friendly match, and then Lucario got a huge increase in power and speed, looking like a complete menace. Lucario ends up knocking down Pikachu and starts going absolutely feral, only having one goal in mind: to inflict as much damage as possible on Pikachu. Karina starts taking notice of this and tells Lucario to calm down, but he absolutely will not listen. Lucario started slowly descending into madness. He did not care and only had one goal in mind: to destroy Pikachu.
Yeah, the Lucario went insane and was looking to literally kill the Pikachu. Even Karina was worried because of how bloodthirsty Lucario was acting. So she clearly didn't know what was happening or how to even stop the Lucario. And in Mega Lucario's Dex entry, it states, it strikes enemies without mercy and its fighting style can be summed up in a single word: heartless. So yeah, reading that and seeing the moment in the anime, it makes sense, but for the show, it's too far, I feel like, in my opinion at least for who the show is for, because I can't imagine being so young and seeing that scene. Like, it would traumatize me so bad. But this does bring me to all of the other Mega Evolutions out there that are downright dark. For Mega Garchomp, it says, the excess energy from Mega Evolving melted its arms and wings, transforming them into giant scythes, and goes mad with rage due to the pain of its arms and wings being melted. With Houndoom, its claws and tail are literally melting from its high body heat and it brings it immense pain. Glalie jaw literally breaks in half from the amount of excess energy that is spilling over its mouth when it evolves and puts it into a state where it can no longer eat. It can't eat. And I know Mega Evolutions are temporary, but that's insane. Or Tyranitar, it literally splits its spine in half to Mega Evolve, which of course makes it go berserk due to the pain. Anyone and anything standing in Mega Salamence's way will get sliced in half immediately while it continues to keep on flying. And it says it might even turn on its own trainer if it feels like it. And that it's even been dubbed the name Blood-Soaked Crescent. The fact that it gets that name is something I'm not sure I would have ever seen coming in Pokemon. You have Caesar, where it continuously gains an unlimited amount of energy, which if it's in that state for too long, its body will start to melt. Gengar just tries to take the lives of anyone and everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a trainer because it'll want to curse you as well. And once Metagross undergoes Mega Evolution, its brain becomes so stimulated and so big that it will result in battles so cruel that it'll make you want to cover your own eyes, is what it says. And if it knows it can't win, it digs its claws deep into you until it explodes. So I mean, just hope you're not the one fighting Champion Steven and his powered up Metagross, because it'll be brutal and dark. But I mean, I've won already several times against him, so he's like nothing. He's actually pretty shit. Now, thankfully, not all of them are bad, because you have some like Mega Pinsir, who's probably just happy to evolve because it can finally fly. But a common theme with a lot of these Mega Evolutions is that they all descend into a state of madness purely because of the amount of excruciating pain that they're going through within this process, or the amount of overwhelming energy that's being put into them so suddenly that they're just out for blood, and that's it. Which is really scary to think about it like that, but that's really what some of them can go through. And like I said before, Mega Evolution is a special bond and trust between you and your Pokemon, and even though your Pokemon does trust you a lot to put it into that state, the fact that you're literally forcing it to evolve into a state where it's in excruciating pain is crazy for me to think about, but I don't know. And honestly, I can only imagine the amount of dark entries that we'll get for the new Mega Evolutions coming to Legend ZA, but in a way, it does always make you think about what you're putting your Pokemon through whenever you make them undergo Mega Evolution. Now let's take a look at some of the most recent games, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and to a character that I think I can safely say I love the most out of any Pokemon game, which is Arven. In Scarlet and Violet, you have 3 different paths to choose from to complete the entire storyline, and in my opinion, the most unique and biggest path, which is Arven's. And I wanted to go over why his story is so sad and depressing. So you first meet Arven near the lighthouse on Poco Path, and he notices you have a special Pokemon with you, being either your Miraidon or your Koraidon. He comes off pretty aggressive after Nemona mentions his parents, which are the professors of this game, being either Professor Turo or Professor Sada, which shows he probably doesn't have a pretty good relationship with them if he's getting mad at just her mentioning them. We also find out that he has some sort of special hatred for this Pokemon for no apparent reason, it feels like. The next time you find Arven is inside of the school, where he asks you to go on an adventure with him to obtain the very rare herbs known as the Herba Mystica that are said to help Pokemon feel better a lot quicker. The only catch being that you have to battle giant Titan Pokemon who are each guarding a different type of herb. But after defeating the second Titan, you learn why Arven is even on this journey to begin with. Arven brings out his partner Pokemon known as Mabosstiff, who was hurt pretty bad a while ago and has never been able to recover from it. He says that Mabosstiff is the only thing in the world that he cares about that's been there for him through his toughest times while alone, and wants to do whatever it takes to make him better again. But when you do get all of the Herba Mysticas, Arven is able to give them all to Mabosstiff and he's able to fully recover it, finally, and it's able to act like a regular Pokemon again. But when you make it back to the lighthouse, Arven explains why he really doesn't like his parents. And it's because he's never been able to have a normal childhood with his parents because they were always working and never spent time with him. He's really only ever had Mabosstiff to be there for him, and that's why he did anything and everything he could to help it recover again. But then you eventually have to go to the center of Paldea, which is Area 0, with a task to deliver the Scarlet and Violet book to the professor in the deepest part of Area 0. And this is also where you learn that these aren't his actual parents. I'm afraid that there is something for which I must apologize. I am not the true professor. Oh, okay. What are you talking about? I'm an artificial intelligence the professor created, imbued with his memories and knowledge. In short, I'm an AI-powered robot. The real professor passed though. Whoa. Wow. Oh. So his dad is dead. What a twist.
The Pokemon was not to be blamed. It was the original professor who failed to accurately judge its full power. I believe the professor wanted nothing more than for the Miraidon to survive and thrive. That is why he threw himself in front of the Miraidon in an attempt to protect it. The original professor no longer exists. During the destruction of the research station, his physical body received grievous injuries that left it unable to sustain life. I'm afraid that this fact may be difficult for his son Arven to accept. I now manage the Zero Lab in the original professor's place. Oh, it's so sad.
So the clip you just saw was my initial reaction to finding out that they had passed away, and it wasn't anything special, and I'm surprised I didn't make more of a big deal out of it when I found out, but because that's pretty big news. But the professor that you've been talking to this whole time throughout the entire journey from the beginning was just an AI-powered robot. The real professor had passed away during an incident that destroyed the 4th research station. And what had happened was the professor really wanted to protect this special Pokemon with anything they could do, so they literally threw their own body in front of the Pokemon to protect it, ending in them just dying. But you do eventually have to fight the professor, and at the end, Arven does confront the professor on who they really are. And this just feels like such a disturbing cutscene to me because of the way the AI talks and moves. And also the fact that it had that one moment where it felt like the real professor was inside of that body reaching out to their son one last time. Like trying to show how much they cared for him before the AI consumed them and forced them to battle again. I mean, just like think about if that was your own parents. Like for me, I would go insane. Like I don't even know what I would do, because just, I love my parents. So just to see them and see them as a machine, that would bring me chills, and I would never be able to get over it and sleep, probably. And you also get one moment in the scene when the text glitches, and for a split moment it says AI Toro or Sada has no intention of fighting anymore, which just makes the scene even more heartbreaking, because you know that they're forced to do this and they can't not do this if they want this all to be over with, which is just, that's so sad. With all that being said, I mean, Arven has had such a rough and depressing time in his life. I mean, between not having his parents around really when he was a kid, to finding out that they died, while also having a Pokemon that he loves so much be so injured to the point where it's paralyzed and he has to find a cure. But I mean, he still kept going and managed to eventually find a solution despite every single thing that was going wrong, which is a lot for a kid to have happened to, even in your teens. Like, he's a teenager right now. That's insane. But I feel like to any normal person, this situation would drive them like insane. I know it would to me, 100%. And that's why I literally love this character for going through what he did and not ever giving up and just having the strongest resolve I've seen out of probably any Pokemon character ever. And that's the sad and depressing story of Arven. Now let's go back to the beautiful year of 2016, when Niantic had released its infamous game, Pokemon Go, which was meant to be this new fun way of catching Pokemon by actually going out into the real world and exploring for them, instead of in the countless Pokemon games we already know and love. But very quickly, things would take a very dark turn. Even though this game had been meant to be pushed out into the world in such a positive way, which it successfully did by having people literally go outside and get some exercise while using a concept that was already so popular, well, only a couple of days after Pokemon Go had been released, there were already countless stories on terrifying encounters people had, some injury-related incidents, and there were even some deaths that had happened while people were playing this game. So there's a website called the Pokemon Go Death Tracker, and it's exactly what you would expect from the title of it, which does show you all of the recorded deaths and injuries that have happened while people were playing this game. But this website isn't anything new at all. I mean, it's actually been around since the game was first released, but it's something that I didn't even know existed until I saw a video from someone named Trip, and he's gone into more detail on that website if you want to check his video out. I will link it in the description. But there are some incidents that I do want to talk about because they're just unfortunate situations that have happened, and really makes you think about always being alert whenever you're out in the world with everything around you, no matter what you're doing.
Father is shot and killed in Evanston while playing the Pokemon Go game with his 7-year-old daughter. It happened just after 9 last night in a park along the North Shore Channel on McCormick Boulevard. 29-year-old Servando Amros was pronounced dead at the scene, but fortunately his daughter wasn't hurt. Our Sabrina Franza has the very latest on the investigation.
The rain pours in Evanston. A mother's pain brings her to her knees on the soaked grass. Around 9 p.m. Thursday, just hours prior, her son came here to do what dads and daughters do, play a game. This one was Pokemon Go.
So yes, on July 14th, 2022, a man by the name of Servando Amros was playing Pokemon Go with his 7-year-old daughter when he was shot and killed right in front of her. Officers responded to a call of shots fired and later found Servando lying on the ground with multiple gunshot wounds in him, where he was pronounced dead at the scene. Now I'm going to play you a part of the interview that they had with the mother, and it's just really heartbreaking to listen to.
They killed him, and my granddaughter FaceTimed us saying, "Help me, Daddy's shot."
Amros's parents were steps away from McCormick Park.
We were on the other side of the park exercising. We heard the gunshots, and my mother's heart. I just knew, and I ran as fast as I could.
Police say at least one man got into an argument with him and then started firing. His family has no idea why this could happen. They only know
These people need to be caught. They need to be brought to justice.
police are still looking for the person responsible. They have not yet made any arrests.
Yeah, so even the mother was close to them when this happened and had heard the gunshots go off. Not to mention that his daughter was also shot at by the attacker and had to witness all of this happening right in front of her eyes. I mean, for a 7-year-old to go through all of that, to see all of that happening right in front of her eyes, and the fact that she could have died as well is just, I can't come to terms with it. And also the fact that she has to deal with this memory for the rest of her life. To me, it's just, I feel so sorry for the family and all of them. It's not something that any 7-year-old should ever go through. And of course, this situation should have never happened. It's just, Now, the attacker was later identified as Kyron Monroe, who did turn himself in and thankfully was arrested later on. Anyways, my heart does go out to the family, and I hope that one day they can recover from all this, especially the daughter who had to witness all of this happening. I mean, I can't even imagine at 7 years old going through something so huge, so life-changing, and you have to deal with this for the rest of your life, and it's something that most people in life don't ever have to deal with. But I just really hope one day they can all live a better, happier life. Now in 2018, a man was playing Pokemon Go when he fell onto some railway tracks, and he suffered high voltage electrical burns that destroyed both layers of his skin and penetrated the tissues underneath it. And the damage was so bad that the doctors were forced to amputate the man's right leg because there was too much nerve damage and tissue that was lost. Now, how he even got to the point where he was next to some railway tracks, nobody knows, but it does serve as a reminder to always look where you're going when playing this game, no matter what, because things like this can still happen, obviously. And not even a month after this game was first released, there were already criminals using this game using lure modules, which is a popular item in this game that can attract a lot of Pokemon to one Pokestop, which other people can make use of as well, in which those criminals would lure other people to that Pokestop to rob them. Which, if you remember, Mr. Nightmare had talked about this when the game first came out.
One of the bigger cases so far was the story of a group of armed robbers apparently targeting victims using the game, who had done so successfully up to 8 times. The group of 4 teenagers were apprehended by police in O'Fallon, Missouri on Sunday after allegedly robbing a 33-year-old man. Most of you know the app contains Pokestops, which are randomly placed on notable locations in towns where players can earn points, Pokeballs, and make purchases. The player has to actually walk to that location to earn the points, which are available to all players. The game also features a lure module, which attracts Pokemon to a specific Pokestop. This invites other players to come to the location and collect Pokemon as well. This is exactly how these 4 teenagers lured unsuspecting players, mostly kids, to this specific location where they robbed them. One of the victims shared his experience, explaining he was simply walking to a Pokestop in the night when 3 guys came out from behind a parked van with a handgun demanding money. 2 of the robbers were 18 years old, one 17, and another 16. The 16-year-old is the only robber not being charged as an adult.
So yeah, I couldn't find any more information on related incidents like this happening to this day, but I can only imagine the amount of deaths and injuries that haven't been recorded if these 4 people were able to get away with 8 different robberies using this game. Now, of course, a lot of these incidents on this website didn't really happen because of the game itself. They just happened to be playing the game at the time and the terrible event took place. But seriously, again, it does always serve as a reminder to always be aware and alert whenever you're outside doing anything, because you really never know what could happen. Okay, so let's just start with one of the most popular and probably one of the most creepiest scenes you'd ever see in a Pokemon game ever, which is the ghost girl from Lumio City in Pokemon X and Y. Oh, and I got a new wardrobe change for whatever reason. But I mean, it's got Tokyo on it, so I mean, you know, that's a pair, okay? Now in Lumio City, there is a specific building to where if you go up to a certain floor, you'll enter a room, and upon entering the room, the joyful Lumio City music just stops suddenly and you're left with literally no sound, which personally I hate a lot, when there's just no sound in a place where there's so much good music and it's joyful and happy. The screen randomly starts flashing black and a creepy, crazy-eyed girl appears behind you, and instead of walking past you, she instead floats away and says, "No, you're not the one." Which, to this day, I still can't wrap my head around the fact that they thought this was a good idea to put in a game geared towards children, and it was probably just a joke. But I mean, there's even people out there who said they stopped playing the game entirely for days or weeks because of how terrifying this event really was. And I mean, I definitely wouldn't trust this game anymore if this had happened to me while I was a kid, playing like in the middle of the night or something. But I still remember the day that I got Pokemon X back in 2013 along with my 2DS, which I still have to this day and I love. But honestly, I wish I could remember how I reacted to this scene when I first got the game. Must have not been great. And there's a lot of different theories as to who she is and why she did what she did. Like, apparently there was one theory where she was looking for a specific trainer ID, and if that one person matched the trainer ID that she was looking for, they would get a special specific Pokemon?
It was theorized that whoever had the correct ID would receive an incredibly rare Ghost-type legendary Pokemon. The only way this theory would be plausible is if X and Y got the Z version it deserved. There were many cuts made to X and Y that were planned to be in a Z version, but we never got to see that. AZ's Floette is an example of unused Z content.
Which to me, and I'm sure a lot of people, is probably crazy that that theory even exists, because why would only one person in the entire world get a specific Pokemon that no one else can have? I don't think Game Freak or the entire company would ever think that's a logical decision to make, because that would start so many riots, and the amount of like bounties they would have for this Pokemon and whatever, and all of this would be, I don't know how high they would go. If Pokemon cards go for, you know, the amount that they go for right now, which actually I don't know if they go for a lot right now. I'm not too into that scene. I can only imagine though with that this would be an insane amount of money. And there's also the theory of her being the ghost girl from Mount Pyre in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, since that game took place in Generation 3, and in there she looks exactly the same and has the same lines. So people think that it's just her that had passed away and now she's a ghost that haunts people forever. But honestly, I just like to think about the moment where Junichi Masuda was asked about this moment in the game, and he just responds with, "We didn't put anything like that in this game," and denies ever doing anything like that. So I like to think of it all as just a random fun gag that they decided to put in the game. Or did they? Because of his response, it could all just be ghosts, I guess. Although they probably did end up scarring a lot of their fan base with this one scene. Alright, so this next story comes from the Galar region in Pokemon Sword and Shield, and it's of a little girl named Paula. So you first meet Paula in the town of Hammerlock, where she wants you to deliver a love letter to someone she's been admiring, whose name is Frank, in the town of Valenlia. And since Paula is a little girl, you'd expect the little boy you find in Valenlia to be Frank. Except for when you talk with him, he says that Frank is his dad's name. So you apparently have this little girl who's crushing on an old man. Well, when you go inside of the house and talk with his father, Frank, he says how he remembers Paula and a girl who he used to spend all of his time with playing when he was younger. But over time, Paula got really sick and always kept it a secret from Frank, which he did later get mad at her for. And eventually Frank had to move away and never got to see her again, and he's always wondered what had happened to her since then. But shortly after he moved, Paula had passed away from her illness, so the girl that you initially spoke to in Hammerlock was her spirit. Her spirit was never able to rest until she finally let Frank know how she felt about him. And now that he finally knows, Paula can move on to the next life. As you can see, when you try to go back to the same spot that you initially met her in, she is no longer there. And instead, there's a note that's left there that says, "Thank you so much, my dear." So in Pokemon Black 2 and White 2, there's a place known as the Strange House. Now in the Strange House, you're led through the entire house by the ghost of a girl who appears randomly at times, saying little sentences, until you eventually reach the final room and obtain the Lunar Wing, where the girl appears and asks for you to return the wing back to the Pokemon on the Marvelous Bridge. A location where she used to be back in the original Black and White, and when you walked up to her, she would just disappear and not say a single word. There's an old lady next to the bridge that tells you that there used to be a girl who would always play with an Abra there. So it was led to be believed that she died in an accident with her Abra on the bridge because of how she just disappears in a ghostly way after you talk to her or after you walk up to her. But the theory is that she was put into a never-ending dark sleep by Darkrai and eventually just died in her sleep. But honestly, I like this theory a lot more from this person on Reddit, and it goes as follows. Hypno hypnotized the young girl to sleep permanently so it and Drowsy could feed off of her dreams. This causes her to experience something similar to nightmares. Darkrai is attracted to whatever is happening and comes to observe. The girl's parents see Darkrai and assume that it is the one that is responsible for their daughter's suffering, which causes serious friction in their marriage. Eventually, the mother sets out to find the Lunar Wing. She finds one and brings it back triumphantly. They attempt to use it only to find out that it was useless when it came to helping their daughter. Their daughter dies while in a coma. The house ends up empty but still fully furnished, so either the parents abandoned the house and didn't want anything to do with it after their daughter's death, or they lived in it until they died, and with no living children, the house just became abandoned. And if you've seen MatPat's video on this story, at the end, he shows that Darkrai's Pokedex entry says that it isn't a malicious Pokemon and that it uses its nightmares as a defense mechanism. We don't really know why Darkrai would have even done this in the first place to this girl. The person on Reddit also states that since the girl keeps referring to her dreams as dark dreams and dreams of darkness and never said they were nightmares, that it had to be Drowsy that was already eating her dreams and causing her to dream of literally nothing but darkness. So to me, I'm more so on the side that Drowsy and Hypno kept the girl constantly asleep and Darkrai is just being framed, but I'm also an idiot that just agrees with anything sometimes, so who knows? Let me know what you think. Oh, and also sorry if I explained all of that poorly. I'm pretty bad at it sometimes, even when I write it out, so just check out MatPat's video or check out that person on Reddit. And they, you can get more of a clearer understanding of this story. All right, so in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, there's the Elite Four member Phoebe, who specializes in ghost-type Pokemon. And during the cutscene you have with her before battling, there's two moments where you can see a random child appear. There's one that's sitting in the chair that's placed in the room for seemingly no reason at all. To me, at least, I don't understand why there would just be a random chair in an Elite Four room. But while you're talking with her, it fades to black and you get the POV of the child that was sitting on that chair, and now it's looking at you guys. Then it switches back to another angle where you can see the child literally clear as day, and it's just standing there looking at you guys for whatever reason. And one of the most popular theories is that it's Phoebe's grandmother who had passed away, and a lot of people believe that it's just her grandmother watching over her now as a child. So of course, there's the infamous Lavender Town with its scary music and the fact that there's an entire urban legend surrounding it called the Lavender Town Syndrome. And I personally remember 100% believing this because I made a video and it included this topic and I said that it was a fact when it indeed wasn't, and made myself look like a fool in front of my friend that he had to correct me, and it was a whole thing. I was a little boy. Honestly, I was probably like 13 or 14 or something like that. I can't remember, whatever. Well, in the urban legend, it claimed that hundreds of children had done some terrible things to themselves after hearing this music because of its really high-pitched tones, as you remember, and its binaural beats. And they caused some of them to have like headaches, ear infections, nausea, and even seizures that eventually led to their deaths. Now I'm going to play you a short clip from Billy Styler, who shows off the different tones that you can hear within the original Japanese version of these games. And it's a lot.
Well, as the story goes, it all comes down to the music heard after the player reaches Lavender Town. Apparently, the tones heard within the track consisted of two things: binaural beats and high-pitched frequencies, both of which were intense enough to trigger physical and mental disturbances in children. If you're curious, here is a short sample of the tones heard within the original Japanese versions of the game.
Yeah, so just listening to that version for me it makes you so uncomfortable. I don't like the sounds. I don't like the different high-pitched tones, the different tones they also use. I just feel like that's actually the worst sound you can experience, and it comes from a Pokemon game of all things. Like, I genuinely felt like I was having a headache while I was listening to that, and I felt like I've never had one before from that music, but that specific scene he played was just so too much. But I mean, it's not just the music in this town that's scary. There's also the girl that asks if you believe in ghosts when you talk to her, and if you say no, she says, "What's that hand on your shoulder?" which I mean, it's a little creepy thing, but like, you know, there's apparently a hand. But it's also a place that has a literal graveyard in a tower filled with ghost Pokemon for people whose Pokemon had died and they bury them there. And it's no surprise that this can happen. I mean, monsters are literally fighting each other to the death usually sometimes. And I wanted to include the death of Blue's Raticate in that theory, which if he really died or not, and if he buried him in the Pokemon Tower. But there's so many back and forth arguments that I just don't even want to get into that and just be wrong about it. And just, if you want to search for it, go search for it on your own time. I'm just not going to talk about that one here. And that's pretty much Lavender Town. Alright, so back in the month of February in 2022, Pokemon had finally come out with their first ever open world Pokemon games. So naturally, people around the world were excited and were hoping we were going to get something similar to Breath of the Wild in terms of like graphics, playability, and performance, but in Pokemon's way. But when I tell you this game came out in such a rushed and terrible state, it was bad and downright terrifying. Obviously, this game had an insane amount of lag at certain times and technical issues that should have never even happened in the first place. But because this game came out in a pretty rushed state, some of these glitches that people experienced are some of the most weird and haunting things I've ever seen come from a video game. Some of those are just too creepy for glitches in a game about Pokemon. I mean, the one with the floating head and then hearing that guy scream, the messed up character faces, the massive Titan with that messed up face is just something that I can't even take. I mean, thankfully some of them are pretty funny, but like some of them are just downright too out there for me. I feel like, I don't know, that's just me. But I haven't really seen any other glitches recently since the game first came out, so they probably fixed most of them, which is at least good to see. And we'd never have to, hopefully, experience that again. Now there's a lot to go over with the old man in the old chateau in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl and Platinum, which when you go inside, you find an old ghost man and a little girl just floating away when you walk into different rooms. There's also a Rotom that lives in there, which you can eventually catch. But in the Pokemon Generations episode on the old chateau, it goes over a lot, which someone named Delta Char on Reddit sums up pretty nicely, which I'll read here. Darkrai's nightmares killed the little girl in the old chateau, causing the family to abandon it. A giant haunter takes the form of an old man, taking up the roles of both caretaker and mentor/role model for the little girl's spirit that is trapped in the house, establishing the old chateau as a kind of ghost sanctuary. Rotom was Cyrus's Pokemon, who betrayed Rotom and sent him to be experimented on by Sharon. Rotom escaped Team Galactic custody and hid in the old chateau in the nearby woods to be protected by the haunter taking care of the place and the little girl who lives there. So basically the entire house is now a ghost sanctuary where they all three just live there together. Now, as I've already talked about before with Mega Evolution and the brutal battle that took place with Lucario and Pikachu, which again, I can't even get over the fact on how brutal they made that scene look, Like, that's probably always gonna be the hardest scene for me to watch in any Pokemon thing ever that will ever come out. But there are some other battles in the anime that are pretty brutal as well, like this one in Sun and Moon, which that specific series, anytime I've watched it, it's always seemed like the most happiest, fun, easygoing, and literally the most kid-friendly out of any of the Pokemon series I've ever seen. And I think a lot of people can attest to that. So seeing a battle like this in that show is just disturbing. In the battle between Lana and Guzma in the Pokemon League, it starts off with Lana calling out to Primarina to use the move Sparkling Aria. But then Guzma immediately calls for his Pokemon Golisopod to use the move Throat Chop, where he does so in a pretty dark and cold way. Golisopod gives her a pretty strong hit to the throat, showing her in immense pain. Then it locks her in with Poison Jab, which she can successfully get away from. But the way she just backs away from him because she looks like she's scared for her life literally brings me so many chills. We get a couple of other scenes of Golisopod attacking that just makes it seem like Primarina is just being tortured instead of feeling like a regular battle. And it really doesn't help with Guzma's dark and cold personality while he's saying each move. Then you have Primarina's soft and gentle personality while she's just crying out in pain after each attack because it's so brutal. And it seriously makes the entire fight hard to watch for me. And so many other people can agree because there's been countless videos on this fight because of how brutal it is, obviously. And then there's this scene where you can see a Buzzwole sucking the life out of a Snorlax and making it completely flat, literally sucking out its insides. I'm not gonna make any jokes. Now, I haven't seen the entire episode, so I don't know what its motive was or why it was doing this, but just seeing that firsthand is just... But I mean, this scene is shown in a pretty lighthearted way by the music choice and the way the Snorlax just dies. But like, that has to be the most cruel thing to just see and feel, and of course it had to be on the fattest Pokemon of them all, unless you count Wailord, I guess. But like, it's just, that's a scene that I just can't get over. There's hair everywhere, but that is just, that's a lot. But all the way back to the original anime has some of the most depressing scenes I think I've ever seen on any of the shows. So on episode 11 of the show, there's a scene where Ash, Brock, and Misty come across an injured Charmander sitting on a rock, where they learn through Pikachu that it's been waiting a long time for its trainer to return to it. While later, when they head to the Pokemon Center, they overhear a trainer named Damien who is bragging about abandoning his Charmander. They obviously get upset and go to retrieve the Charmander where it's now raining. And if you know anything about Charmander, then you know when the flame on its tail goes out, it will die. And you can see this Charmander in the same spot, still waiting there for its trainer to return in the rain, covering its tail with a leaf so the flame doesn't go out. It also gets attacked by some wild Spearows, which makes this scene even more heartbreaking because it's literally defenseless in the rain. They eventually manage to get the Charmander to a Pokemon Center and heal it, but just knowing that this thing could have died is pretty dark. But there's also the theory where Ash was put into a coma in the very first episode of Pokemon because as we see him now, he's always portrayed as this 10-year-old guy in any of the series he's in, despite obviously making a lot of progress and obviously looking older. But people also think that since in that first episode, Ash did see the legendary Pokemon Ho-Oh, and since in Ho-Oh's dex entry it says that anyone who sees it will be granted eternal happiness, and because we already know that Ash loves to go on adventures to eventually become the Pokemon champion, that he'll always stay a 10-year-old kid and do this for the rest of eternity, basically. Which, I mean, wouldn't be bad, but it's just, like, just not knowing. I don't know, between immortality and death and people always choosing a side, like, it honestly seems like hell to be. But then again, if you don't know, like, I don't know, actually. I'm not gonna go, I just spit everywhere. I'm not gonna go into any more detail on that. It's a lot. And there's even been some banned episodes, as probably a lot of you may know by now. There's one where they gave James from Team Rocket huge breasts so he could win a beauty contest, and he jokes around with Misty on how she could get these when she's older. As a joke in that show. Wild. There was a literal gun being used on Ash in the show where a man kept threatening to shoot him if he didn't obey the rules in the Safari Zone. And there was also one with Jinx that eventually got banned because of its skin color at the time because people were deeming it as a racial stereotype. And the most famous banned episode ever from Pokemon, which if you don't know, when Ash and his friends are with Porygon in cyberspace, Pikachu eventually uses a massive thunderbolt that causes a very fast flashing of red and blue lights that literally hospitalized 800 children, and it was from all of the epileptic seizures that they got from all those flashing lights, obviously, which I can't even begin to like imagine. Like, you think this show is as safe as it can be, it's obviously kid friendly, and then your child is literally in the hospital because of the show. Like, because of the show, I don't and in the very first Pokemon movie, I think had the most depressing scene of all, and that's when Ash basically turns to stone and dies, basically. I mean, the entire scene is so sad because you have all of the regular Pokemon and all of the clones from Mewtwo fighting it out in this massive brawl, and it just, the entire scene makes it feel like they don't want to, and they're just forced to, and it's, well, obviously they have to fight it, but like, it's just how they made the moment and everything. It's still a weird one to watch for me. And eventually, throughout all of it, you see Ash try to jump in between a blast from Mewtwo and Mew, which turns him into stone. Everyone stops fighting and goes silent, and all you can hear are Pikachu's desperate attempts to bring Ash back, which does make all of the other Pokemon cry and eventually brings Ash back to life. So, I mean, I guess it's not all lost, but just watching Pikachu and just how sad he is after just seeing their entire journey together and seeing how much Pikachu resented Ash, and now just seeing him want him back so much. It's just, oof, like that they made that scene as emotional as it could be, and like that's definitely one I'll remember forever. And I feel like that scene in general could just make anyone cry, and it's just so sad. Alright, so there you guys go. I hope you enjoyed some of those disturbing things about Pokemon. Now, I know there's a lot more dark and scary things that are in Pokemon that I wasn't able to get to in this video. Like all of the creepypastas, a lot of different moments in the anime and games, and just a lot of other stuff in general I couldn't get to because I didn't want this video to be like 2 hours long, and I really don't even know how long this one's gonna be. So I just wanted to make sure I wasn't gonna go like too crazy, you know? So if you want a part 2 to this, definitely let me know. I mean, Halloween is coming up pretty soon, so it wouldn't be a bad idea. I mean, at the time I'm recording this, it's September 6th, so I mean, it's getting there. But honestly, there's a lot of other scary videos that I want to try doing in general instead of just Pokemon. Mainly videos like someone named Tub on YouTube who does pretty much anything and everything in general that's scary and disturbing, and he covers that topic. But I just wanted to do something dark on Pokemon because it's something I'm very familiar with and something I love and I've been playing since I was a little kid, and something that I started in the beginning of this channel. So I decided, why not just try it out, you know? But also, if it seemed like I was not doing the best or I look sweaty and glistening, it's because it's so hot in this house right now because our AC is down. And yeah, so there's a massive storm happening, and it's just, it's bad. And like, I'm wearing a hoodie right now because I don't want to show my hair, even though I already have before. And also, if I like take it off, it just shows how much I'm sweating even more. So I'm just like, I'll deal with it right now, and I just wanted to record this, okay? I just didn't want to wait any longer because I've been waiting, and eventually we'll get it fixed, okay? I have this fan right next to me, literally just like helping me get through it right now. I have to turn it on and off, and it's a lot right now, okay? Also, I didn't know that they came out with a Minecraft spicy TNT Pringles can. It's basically just like, yeah, I mean, I've already tasted. I'm literally, again, I'm sweating right now. Like, I'm literally using paper towel to wipe off the sweat. It's been bad, man, okay? It's been hard out here, so. Also, I'm not feeling the best, so, yeah. As you can see, I'm not doing well at all. Anyways, I've tasted it before, and I guess it's just jalapeno or sriracha. I don't know, it feels like a sriracha chip or something, which sounds weird to say, but, you know, I guess, I don't know. It's a cool packaging to me. I want to keep it as decoration. Obviously I'm gonna eat the contents. I'm going to eat the contents inside. I'm not gonna leave it like this. I just thought it was awesome. And yeah, I don't know. I've just never seen like oh, I guess you have some games in chips before. Okay. Anyways, with all of that being said, make sure you stay safe out there and always think about what you're doing to your Pokemon whenever you decide to Mega Evolve it. Alright, bye.